MRV means most recoverable volume. Basically, the maximal amount of volume your body can effectively recover from on a particular training session or in the particular week of training. Why is that metric so important to track? Basically, it is proven that the more volume we have in our trainings, the more we will grow. However, we can't just do like an infinite amount of volume and grow like crazy because we won't be able to recover from it. So the MRV is just a certain threshold that tells us how much volume we can effectively recover from and grow from it so that it will be productive. If we pass the MRV threshold on a certain training session, it starts becoming counterproductive. We would literally get less gains than if we would just like slightly touch that MRV threshold, get basically ideally close to it. And this is also why steroids make you jacked, simply because they just make your body able to recover more effectively, thus raising your MRV threshold so you can just bang out more volume on every single training session. And we already know that more volume equals more muscle growth. So from that analogy, we can come to a conclusion that the key to growing as much muscle as possible is really optimizing your recovery so that your MRV threshold is as high as possible. Maybe even taking steroids if that's your thing. I don't judge, but I highly discourage you to do that. And if we already have our recovery maximally optimized so that the MRV threshold is as high as it can possibly be for us, then the only thing we need to do is to figure out a way to get as close to that MRV threshold without surpassing it on every single training session. And this would be just the most effective way to grow muscle. Some people also say that, wait, in order to build muscle, we also gotta have progressive overload, right? Yes, you're precisely right. And actually, the studies found that the best method of progressively overloading for the most muscle growth is just progressively overloading with volume. So keeping the weight the same, just increasing the amount of reps or increasing the amount of sets or just doing both. Which basically means that the best way to grow muscle is progressively overloading the total amount of volume you do from week to week, every single week, basically until you can't do that no more. So let's say in our first week, we really managed to get as close to that MRV threshold as possible. We are really close to it on every single training session. Life is good, we get gains. So you can ask a question, how can we progressively overload volume in another week if we are as close to that MRV threshold as currently possible? Basically, the answer is our body adapts. If we do a lot of volume, our body adapts to that volume, therefore our work capacity increases, which basically means that our MRV threshold gets a little bit higher after every single workout we effectively recover from. So for this reason, our MRV after every single productive week of training gets a little bit higher. So we can basically progressively overload our volume on the second week. And then on the third week, it will also get a little bit higher, so we can also overload the volume a little bit. So you get the point. So now we can summarize that the best way to grow muscle is just being able to raise that MRV threshold as high as possible through optimal recovery. I'm not going to talk about recovery because this video is not about recovery. Then being able to come as close to that MRV threshold on every single workout we do, and then also increasing the total amount of volume we do each and every week to account for slightly increased MRV. I can really confidently say that this shit works. I have proven it with my legs and with my biceps. Basically, like 6 months ago, I started doing barbell squats with like 100 kg on my back, and I was doing 3 sets of 10 reps. And I wasn't increasing the weight at all, I was only increasing the amount of sets every single week. After 4 weeks, I got to 6 sets of 10 reps of 100 kg squats. It was really brutal, it was really painful, and then I actually repeated it with 10 kg more. So I started again doing 3 sets of 10 with 110 kg, and I also progressed it to 6 sets of 10 reps. And it was pretty hard for me. I was literally like taking 2 minutes for each and every set to complete because I was like resting for half a minute between the last reps. And bro, the growth I got in my quads was just incredible. I will really try to find some photos from before I did that, because after I've done that, like literally years of insecurity with thin legs gone in 2 months like that. So This shit really works. I've also done that with my biceps. I'm not on a pump right now, but I will show a photo, and I think you can really compare the size of the arm with that photo. So yeah, now let's get further into the video and let's discuss the more specific things. So as I said, we should progressively overload by just doing either more reps or more reps for each body part we want to grow every single consecutive week. But obviously there is a point at which our MRV will be so high already that our body won't really be able to adapt, won't really be able to increase it much higher, and that is when we will go over it, because we will still be progressively overloading the volume. And in that week, when we slightly surpass that MRV, you will know when that happens. When it happens, basically you're like really fatigued, you feel really unmotivated to train, you will basically feel that, trust me. Ideally, it should happen in like week 3rd, 4th or 5th. And that is exactly when you take a deload week. So when you take a deload week, you just cut the volume and the intensity by half, and you do like a full week of that. And what it does, it basically makes you slightly detrained, which means it brings your MRV threshold back down, pretty much to the point where it been in the first week of training in that cycle. And you might think it's a bad thing, because you will have to build it up again, but actually, what builds muscle is not having that MRV threshold very high. What builds muscle is actually the process of bringing that MRV higher and higher. So this is actually perfect for us. If we do a deload week, that MRV gets really low, so we get a chance again to do another cycle and to keep increasing that MRV for the next few weeks again, which will be another bout of like incredible hypertrophy for our body. However, we still should keep progressive overload going. We can't just repeat 4 weeks of exactly the same work we just did. I mean, technically we could, but our body really adapted already to the things we have been doing for the last couple of weeks. So the adaptations wouldn't be nearly as good as if we just increase the weight slightly. So to keep things simple, let's say you are staying nicely close to that MRV and you're progressing just with volume for the 4 weeks. In your 4th week you really feel overtrained, you really feel fatigued, so you take a deload week, your MRV drops again. And in the next cycle, you just add like 2.5 kg or maybe 5 kg to certain lifts, and you repeat exactly the same thing. So the volume you're doing in that next cycle is exactly the same as in the previous cycle, just the weight changes. And because of that, the total weight lifted in each consecutive cycle is just higher and higher. And this keeps our long-term progression going nicely and steadily upwards all the time. And obviously the real life progress will probably not be that smooth, but I just made these charts so you can grasp the concept better. So now let's look at some different ways you can progressively overload during the cycle from week to week. Basically there are many different ways to do so. For example, you could increase only weight, you could increase sets and weight, you could increase reps and weight, or you can just increase everything at the same time. However, as I already told you, the best proven way to progressively overload for hypertrophy is just progressively overloading with the volume. So the option on the top left here, I think this is it, is the worst one here actually, because we're not increasing the volume at all. So I wouldn't really do that for hypertrophy, but I just wanted to show you that there is that option, you know. And the other 3 charts, they are fine, honestly. You're increasing volume in each one of them, and this is just what matters. What I do personally is I just have like a double progression rep range for each and every exercise. For example, with barbell bicep curls, I have like 8 to 12 reps. And during the cycle, I really do everything I can to get to the top of that repetition range. But for example, if I get to 12 reps in like week 2, then I either try to add one more set and drop like 1 or 2 reps from each set, or I just add a little bit of weight and drop 1 or 2 reps from the set. Simply because I don't really find doing bicep barbell curls with more than 12 reps like effective for me personally. So this is what I would do if I were you. I would just pick like a rep range that is the most comfortable for me for each exercise. For example, I really like doing my hammer curls with like even 20 reps because I really feel my biceps that way. Basically pick rep ranges that you feel work your muscles the most effectively. So during the cycle, really try to increase just the volume, but obviously if you don't find that optimal for you, just increase the weight a little bit. You don't have to increase weights just between the cycles, you know? So throughout the whole cycle, you might have been constantly wondering, how do I know exactly whether I have reached my MRV, whether I got close to my MRV? And basically the answer is, you don't. I mean, there are some like scientific equipments that you can use to measure that. However, most people don't have access to it, so I'm not even gonna mention how it works. The method most bodybuilders use, literally Mr. Olympia level bodybuilders use that method, is going by feel. So when they start a cycle, they usually do too little, because it's always better to do too little instead of too much. They do too little, and then week to week they just increase that volume if they feel good and recovered between every training session. And you should basically experiment like that. Ideally, you want to reach a point when you're constantly adding volume each and every week, and you're getting to a point where you're really fatigued, really unmotivated at like 4th or 5th week. This is like a perfect situation. This is where you drop the volume and intensity, you do a deload week, and if it happened for you, for example, in the 3rd week or in the 6th week, don't worry, you can just adjust the volume so that on the next cycle you will be closer to that 4th or 5th week. And one thing I also want to show you are the 5 levels of volume you can generate on a particular training session. So as you can see on that graph, we have our MRV threshold right here, and level 1 is just too little volume for the body to even disrupt the homeostasis and cause any adaptations. So we definitely don't want that. However, if that happens for you right at the beginning of the cycle, it's obviously nothing wrong. You're just learning how much volume your body needs. The second level is your volume is high enough to cause some growth, some adaptations, but the adaptations are not maximized. It basically means you could have done a little bit more and caused a little bit more growth. But we're getting growth here, we're getting adaptations, so it's already really good. The third level is like a sweet spot. We come exactly as close to the MRV as possible, but we don't surpass it. So we're like maximizing the adaptations, the potential adaptations and growth we can get from that workout. You should really strive to get to that level on every workout, but obviously it don't happen all the time. Even for, as I said, Mr. Olympia level bodybuilders, they still don't really get to that point on every single workout they do. However, I can assure you that is their like main goal on their training sessions. The fourth level, volume is slightly over the MRV threshold, which still produces pretty good adaptations, but adaptations are slightly worse than on the level 3, because your body is just slightly overtrained, and it actually produces a little bit of fatigue that your body needs to get rid of by resting a little bit more. So this is actually the point we should get in our 4th or 5th week. This is when we should do so much volume that we just feel that was too much and that we need a deload week. So this level you should really reserve that just for the last week of each cycle, not counting the deload. And the 5th level, you basically never want to get there, because it's surpassing your MRV threshold by so much that there are very little adaptations happening, very little growth, maybe even none. And it produces just a lot of fucking fatigue to your body that it has to really recover a lot from. So we never want to get to that point. However, it's pretty hard to get to that point. You would have to like not listen to your body at all to get there. So don't worry about it, you will probably never get there. I just wanted to show that what happens if you do too much. So basically your mission from now on is landing somewhere on a spectrum from the level 2 to level 4 on every single training session you do, in every cycle you do. This will just guarantee amazing hypertrophy. And if you're really unsure how much volume you should do right at the beginning of the cycle, I would actually recommend to do something like 6 to 8 sets per muscle group per week, just at the start of the cycle. Obviously you increase that by like 2 sets per week for a couple of weeks until you get to that point, as I said, where you surpass your MRV. And obviously the more experience you have with working out, the more experience you have with these cycles, the better your ability to pick the right amount of volume is. So the more experienced you are, the more you have that sixth sense in your body to get as close to that MRV as possible with every workout. So don't worry about it, it will definitely get better if you really don't have any idea about it right now. Just start with like 6 to 8 sets and increase by 2 sets per week, and you will hopefully need a deload at like 5th or 6th week. This is the ideal situation. So here you can see actually what I personally do. As you can see at the beginning, I only do like 2 exercises for each muscle group. On this example, there is only biceps. At the beginning, I do like only 8 sets per week, and with every week I increase that slightly. Obviously I already do this type of training for like 5 months, so my body's capacity to handle volume is probably a lot better than yours if you have never done that. So that is why I start with 8 sets and then week to week I increase by like 4 sets per muscle group. And you can actually see that after I get to 3 sets with every exercise, I add another exercise instead of just increasing the volume, because more variety is usually better for hypertrophy, you know, just attacking that muscle from different angles, it's usually better. That is also why you can see I'm not just repeating the same exercises twice per week, I do slight variations of these exercises. And as you can see on week 4 I get to 18 sets, and that is usually too much for me. When I do 18 sets in the week for my biceps, they already start having troubles recovering. But that is the point, you know? That is my point to, in week 4, surpass that MRV, because the next week will be deload, so I can rest fully and just get mentally and physically prepared for the next cycle. And yeah, that's pretty much it. This is how you should structure your training for the most muscle gains. I also wanted to say how exercise selection is so fucking overrated. There are all these videos that Jeff Nippert, other guys do with this tier list of exercise selection. Bro, that is so incredibly insignificant. I can guarantee you that if you picked like the worst exercises from this tier list, like the tricep kickback for tricep, I don't know what else was there, but if you pick the worst exercises and you would go intense and you would use that system of progressively overloading that I just explained to you, I can guarantee you would get into an amazing fucking shape. This is just the truth. Exercises don't matter that much. The only thing that matters is that you're hitting the right muscle, you know? So please don't overcomplicate that. If you have to overcomplicate something, just overcomplicate this system that I gave you, because from this you will actually get a lot of results if you do it right. I really can't realize why such information is so underground in the fitness space. This whole system that I just showed you, I learned that from Mike Israetel.
Are going to contradict some stuff you've heard elsewhere or done before. And that's almost always not because these sources are wrong and I'm correct, because I'm Dr. Mike, god damn it. It's because I'm teaching you how to...
And he's like the only guy that I've seen on YouTube explain that. While it is, in my opinion, and also in his opinion, it's like the most important thing when it comes to growing muscle. So yeah, when I would discover that system like 5 years ago, bro, I would be like 5 times bigger right now, literally. So I really do these videos because I want people to realize this. I want people to make twice as much progress as me in half the time. That would be a pleasure if I could make it happen for someone. Basically, one thing I regret the most in my training journey is that I haven't started educating myself more earlier on, because education is a huge thing in strength training programming. So yeah, I try to give you everything on this channel, but obviously I won't be able to educate you about everything, so I really encourage you to learn from different channels like Mike Israetel, Alexander Bromley, Alex Leonidas, things like that. Read books about strength training, and someday you can really just come to a point where you understand everything about strength training. I really have a goal to get to that point, because that's when you're just able to mold your body however you like. You become just an architect of your own body, and that is an amazing concept in my opinion. So yeah, that's it for this video. I'm looking at the script right now if there's anything else, but yeah, that's it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'm really curious if anyone got to the end of it, got to that point. If you did, you're a legend. See you in the next one. Peace out.